So, today we're going to go ahead and start, we're going to look at unit 3 again, brain basics. So we talk about the basic functions of the brain. And unit 2 is brain behavior, how the brain works. And so now we looked at this video partially a little time ago, and we revisit this unit 3 video. Unit 3 is brain building. This is where we get the strategies to help us keep our brain at its optimum. You know, that's what we want. We want our brain to always be at its capacity. So unit 3 is brain building. So let's start with video.
We're back again. We already know the basics about the brain. How it looks, what it does, how it works.
Now we're about to begin the next level, brain building. Let's call up the brain orb and get our level 3 test.
Good afternoon. What can you seek help with today?
Okay, I've been thinking about this a lot.
This is the first.
And the thing is, we learn stuff about how we need to eat and sleep well, and how we can handle stress. And that only gets you so far. I mean, there are just some subjects that I don't get. It looks like other people are catching on quick, and I don't. Like math.
For me, it's Spanish. No clue. I would drop it if I could.
To understand how to solve your dilemma, you must pursue the level 3 autism quest. Find out how the brain learns.
And I knew the answer to that.
We were asked too.
I was going to say, I'd tell you, and then maybe you wouldn't sound like such a 2-year-old in Spanish class.
Ouch. Okay, so we can both use some help with this one.
Time to brainstorm. How do you think the brain learns?
Okay, so one of the things we have to do in order to, these strategies will help us, but one of the things that we need to understand and know is how the brain does the things that it does.
Chris and I are going to write down what we think about learning in our journals.
Well, you guys type your ideas into your notepad.
How do we think the brain learns? You know, we already talked about some things that early on is when we try challenging and difficult things like math. You know, your brain is actually growing those connections, and as those connections go, guess what we get? We get learning. You know, the more connections that are built, the smarter we're getting. So that's where we get the growth mindset. We can develop things like our intelligence, our ability, and our talent, which means that if we accept challenges, we get better and get better and better. And that's why people like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, even though they lost this year, that's why they continue to get better, because they don't assume that they're what everybody else thinks is the number one player. They don't buy into that. They believe that they can get better, so they keep challenging themselves. And so that's how the brain works. When we try challenging things, when we embrace the things that are difficult, our brain learns more. Not doing anything does not cause our brain to grow those connections that we need to improve.
Okay, so we know what thinking is. It's networks of brain cells all talking to each other.
Yeah.
So maybe learning is like making new friends.
Nice, if corny. I think it's like putting new files on a computer. Only sometimes I can't find my download button.
True. Ready to go to the lab?
You know what to do.
So here as we go into the lab, as always.
Hey, Dr. C.
What you doing?
Hey guys, just checking on the blood flow to my brain with my trusty MRI. So, what brings you back here today?
We have another quest.
Onward.
Learning. You know, what is it? And how does it happen?
And how does the brain grow and get stronger, like you said?
Hey, like, honey, I'm, like, home. Ah, my favorite topic. Remember last time we saw how the brain is made up of billions of nerve cells connected together in a network?
Justin?
Brittany?
Yeah, they have branches like trees.
And they took in messages from other cells at the tips of the branches.
And don't forget the pepperoni. You always forget the pepperoni.
Right. Well, these branches are growing and making new connections all the time. Every time you learn something new. Learning new things is like water and sunshine to your brain, making it grow stronger and denser.
Come on, are you serious?
I think of your brain as being like a plant too, Chris.
When it comes to the brain, I don't kid around, kids. Well, sometimes a little. I know most people think they're just born smart, average, or dumb and stay that way. But research shows that the brain is more like a muscle. It gets stronger when you exercise it.
So, gym class can make me smarter?
Well, it's a different kind of exercise you do for your brain. Exploring new information, practicing skills, and learning new concepts. Everyone knows that when you lift weights, your muscles get bigger and you get stronger. That's because the muscle fibers thicken up as you work them. You might not be able to lift 20 pounds when you start exercising. But if you keep it up, you'll eventually be able to do it easily. And to lift a lot more, too.
Does your brain actually get bigger like your muscles do?
Scary. This is your brain. This is your brain on exercise.
I'll be back.
In a way it does. It won't get bigger in the space it takes up in your skull, but it will get heavier because it becomes denser or has more mass. Whoa! Let's take a look at some research showing this effect in lab rats.
Rats?
Don't worry, they're on film. Push start on the screen to see it.
So again, we see the analogies that we've been using, comparing, accepting, challenging, and the growth in our brain to exercising and growing your muscles. And that's a great analogy because that's exactly what we find out, that when we accept challenging things, and that's why, people that settle, people that want things to be easy, that's why you find a lot of them not being able to grow and get to that next level, because it's only when you accept the challenges that you can grow. It's only when you lift weights, when you work out. You can't do the same workout. You can't work with the same weight for weeks and weeks and weeks. Eventually, the weight that you had last week is going to be too easy for you, so you're going to have to put a little bit more on there so you can get the challenge. And that's how we grow. And that's the same way with the brain. That's the same way with challenge. That's the same way with ability. We grow these things. And, we're not born smart, dumb, or in between. These are things that we have to grow.
Researchers put identical rats in two different environments. One was a bare cage with only food and water. The other was filled with toys, puzzles, and games to explore. Kind of a summer camp for rats. As you can see, the rats in the bare cage just lay around doing nothing. The summer camp rats in the enriched environment were very busy exploring and learning.
Frederica, did you know that the tomato was actually a fruit?
Fascinating, Whitworth.
When they measured the rats' brains, it turned out that the summer camp rats, who were busy learning, had brains that were up to 10% heavier than the cage potato rats. So, in a way, their brains had gotten bigger. They looked close up, and it turned out that they had many more connections between their brain cells. That's why their brains weighed more. And that's not all. When they took these rats out of their cages and gave them rat intelligence tests, there was a big difference between them. The summer camp rats turned out to be a lot smarter. But these rats were identical before they were put in different environments. They had the same genes, just like they were twins. It was being in the enriched environment where the rat got a lot of mental exercise that made the difference.
Okay, the same way, we just going back over Unit 3 again. And that's the same way. We have other studies that we've done more closer to us. The chimpanzee's brain is a lot closer to ours because, well, how big is our brain? 3 pounds, yeah, and the chimpanzee's brain weighs between 1 and 2 pounds. So that's really the only difference. But they can, they can learn, they're highly intelligent. And so that's why we use the animals, to test our theory of how the brain learns. What did you learn in this section?
Different environments depends on how you learning.
Right. So if you're in a challenging environment, you're going to learn. If you're in a dormant environment, then the learning is not going to be so great, right? Did you find this section to be useful? Not at all? Not really? Yes? Yes, a lot. Not a lot because you've seen it before. Why is it helpful? Why is it good to know those things?
So it can tell you how to share size of more knowledge.
Right. And because you already have a growth mindset, right? It puts a name on what you have now, and then you feel confident and secure that you're going in the right direction, right? By keep challenging yourself. All right.
So does this mean Cage Potato Rat was doomed to be stupid for life?
Not at all. This experiment was done with lots of rats, some of them old in rat years. Even the old geezer rats gained brain weight and got smarter when they were given mental exercise.
Who you calling old, brainhead?
I thought old dogs, rats couldn't learn new tricks.
Oh, that's a myth. But it probably comes from the fact that people notice how much learning young animals and people do. In fact, if you look at the brains of young babies, even though they have plenty of neurons, they have relatively few connections between them. As the children grow, they develop many, many more connections. And that's because from the first day they're born, babies are busy learning and exploring, exercising their brains.
My baby brother is almost 2, and he's been learning new words every day. Oh, yeah.
That's a great example. Babies learn whole languages just by listening hard to make sense of the sounds others make. If you think about it, that's one of the hardest things to do for most of us. But all normal babies do it in just a few years. This is a big part of the reason that babies' brains grow so many new connections in those years. But for all of us, all through life, learning leads to the exact same kinds of changes in the brain. Even an old guy like me. People used to think that you had a set amount of neurons when you were born and they gradually died off. But that isn't true. In fact, in just the past few years...
Okay, we'll stop right there. We'll pick it back up later. But the thing that you want to see, what was the thing that you saw out of that last little bit right there?
That you have to, the more you grow, you learn things, and that's what gives you more connection between the self and the neurons.
Okay, now we talked about this last week. Why do babies learn so much? Because that's the study that they did. The connections in the baby brains, man, it grows over just a few years. What happens from the time we're babies and we're doing all this learning to the time we're teenagers? What's the one thing that starts to get off track?
I don't know. I think we lose focus.
Focus is a good word.
Because when you grow older, you trying new things, and then suddenly your brain or your body feels not to learn that thing or go on to it, you just drift away. Because most teenagers, when they were a baby, you like, my mom says when I was small, I used to read a lot of books, but now I'm not, because like, you don't feel that connection anymore, it's drifting away from you.
Okay, so that's a good one too. That's a good one. Is some things get bored to you, and then you move on to other things. See, but that's what we've been talking about is challenges. You know, we need a new challenge. Okay, and the word I was looking for though was motivation. You know, as babies, we're motivated. Remember last week we talked about how, you know, you want something to eat as a baby. You don't know how to quite communicate that to your parents because they don't understand. They keep bringing you bottles and you're wet. You want to get changed. You know, so you got to find a way to communicate to them to let them know, hey, I'm wet, I want to be changed. Hey, I'm hungry. You know, so you babies probably try to make those cries a little bit different, and then they try to learn how to walk because they see the brothers and sisters walking, and they say, hey, man, I want to do that. You know, so they're motivated by things, and just like you, because you're a person that likes challenges. Sometimes life is going to take you to different places and people are not going to understand it because it was the same way for me. You know, I've done things and I've gotten to that peak level and then I say, man, I got to do something else. You know, that's how I was with coaching. You know, once my group, the group that I developed won the state title, man, it just wasn't the same. You know, the next year, you know, when I was the head coach that next year, you know, it wasn't the same because I've seen a group that I've taken from you all the way up, you know, and I just believe that I can take this group to the next level. And when it happened, you know, immediately I kind of like faded out and wanted a new challenge. So that's when I started writing the book. And now, you know, writing that first book, even though it's not a bestseller yet, we're still working on that. But I already have started working on the next one, you know, because that's the next challenge. We're always trying to, people with growth mindset always want challenges. And that's why I say, that's why this thing has worked. You know, some judges have asked me before, you know, but some judges have asked me before, you know, how do you know this works? You know, and the reason being is because I say I've taught in the most challenging environment you can teach in the school system, and my kids were successful. My kids were behavior. Don't worry about it. But my kids were behaviorally challenged. You know, they were autistic. You know, so they, you know, small things could set them off and cause them to go into a verbal, physical rage, right? But by motivating them, you know, because a lot of that stuff comes from the fact that they don't have, they don't believe in themselves, they don't believe in their ability to do great things, because a lot of people can say that, but they don't really buy into it, they don't believe that they have that ability.
Is that what you signed about that good first?
Oh yeah. Same to you, man. Love you too. Same to you. But that's what happens. That's what I found out, that a lot of my kids were really acting out because they didn't want to be embarrassed. They didn't know certain things, and in order for them to save face, you know, they just do things, you know, to make people laugh. They do things to get kicked out of class, you know, find other ways to try to make themselves look cool, right? And so, you know, I was able to find a way by using mindset techniques. Not only mindset, but mindset was a big part of that. You know, changing how they feel about themselves. Because once they started buying into that, they was like, oh, wow, I can be a lawyer. Oh, wow, I can be a doctor, right? And these are kids that don't have parents that are lawyers and doctors. They don't have people in their family that has reached that success level. But now I am teaching them that they can reach those levels, because there are millions of people that have come from nothing, you know, to become something, you know, and you can do the same thing. Everybody can, you know. And I you know, I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'm gonna say this. Thomas, Thomas has really, really impressed me because, a lot of times, people say, well, you're not going to be able to learn some of that stuff. But man, when some of the questions I ask Thomas, man, he's right on it. And that proves again that this stuff works. If you make it engaging, if you make it fun, if you're not just sitting here bored to death, right? Then learning can really happen to anybody. You guys are going to be successful. I'm not even worried about you guys. I just want to get some of these other kids that really need it as well to come in on a consistent basis because this can help. I said that last week. The thing that bothers me the most is I keep hearing people say, I want to be successful. I want to change. You're not willing to do the things that it takes to change and be successful. Right?